To continue from last class on the 37 practices, we are currently talking about training and giving up negative emotions. We need to use right mindfulness to work as an antidote to our negative emotions. And whenever negative emotions sprout, that is exactly the moment that we need to work with it. We need to work with such negative emotions right away when it is sprouting. Gompawa said, in order to give up negative emotions, we need to know their shortcomings. We need to know the negative emotions, the characteristics, the antidotes, the causes for their arising. We need to understand all of those. I think after studying Madhyamika, the fundamental verses of Madhyamika and then Abhidharma, especially the ornament of Sutra Shastra, then you would get a very clear understanding of all of these stated above. Having understood their shortcomings, one sees their faults and perceives them as one's enemies. In fact, in this world, in the now society, lots of people don't see negative emotions as negative. They don't see them as harmful. They would rather perceive them as a sign of something positive. For example, someone who has great aggression could be seen as a sign of heroism. Someone has a great amount of desire could be seen as the desire is a sign of being quite ambitious, so on and so forth. But then according to Ornament of Sutras, it says that in order to understand the characteristics of negative emotions, one studies the Abhidharma. Abhidharma is very detailed in terms of describing and talking about the characteristics and the various aspects of negative emotions. After studying Abhidharma, do you feel that you have already progressed on eliminating negative emotions? Maybe some do, but some, I think, rather have started to have more negative emotions and maybe coarse, even more coarse negative emotions. I've heard someone was in retreat for a whole year, but after being in a whole year, we probably would feel that being in solitary retreat for a whole year, a person would progress along the path much further along the way. However, this particular person started to complain about the injustice that she received through the person in charge, through her kimo, and through her neighbors, and so on and so forth. All of those kinds of complaints. And if a person were to have such kinds of complaints, maybe it is because of the capacity from previous life, and maybe because of various causes and conditions. I think people are very different in that sense. Some could be rather quite coarse, and some may not have that much afflictions, and some may have lots of negative emotions and afflictions. As even a non-practitioner, sometimes the worldly beings are rather quite open-minded and open-hearted, and it's very easy to talk to them. And some practitioners, though had already made great progress, but because of their negative karma of the past, it is difficult for them to eradicate the root of afflictions right away. Over here in the Ornament of Sutras, it specifically talks about one should study Abhidharma if you want to study the characteristics of negative emotions. At least one must study the characteristics of the 5 aggregates to understand the root and subsidiary disturbing emotions. In terms of the 5 aggregates, when we studied the Shurangama Sutra, we studied certain aspects of it. Also within the Tibetan Tripitaka, in Abhidharma, it also talks about the 5 aggregates and the 12 daktus, and then there are the 6 root afflictions and the 26 subsidiary afflictions. Was it 20 or 20? Within it is included in the gateway to knowledge. At times, when any emotion such as attachment or aversion arises, one then thinks, this is that one. Now this one has come up. Oh, this is jealousy. Oh, that is aggression. Or this is the subsidiary negative emotion, this is regret, this is frivolous speech, this is anger. Whatever kinds of afflictions arise, let it be the root afflictions or the subsidiary, you need to recognize them right away. You need to acknowledge them right away. Within Abhidharma, it talked very specifically about the characteristics, the category, and the function of the negative emotions, especially in the Mahayana Abhidharma. It speaks quite in detail and quite explicitly. Therefore, in one's mind, you have to have such ability to clearly recognize it. This is really crucial. Why, you may ask? It is because just as a thief that is stealing at that moment, if you were to notice that the thief is stealing, then the thief would no longer to dare to steal. And then from Pachunwa, he spoke the following, saying that even when pressed down by the weight of negative emotions, I will, clenching my teeth, never give up. Well, Pachunwa is a great practitioner. I don't think he needs to clench his teeth to have such severe suffering at the moment of working with negative emotions. Some of the composer kumos, though they are under lots of pressure or negative emotions, they do not want to expose that. They would think that, okay, I have to work with it, I have to work with it. So they've been battling with negative emotions. And maybe that's similar to Pachunwa's teaching, saying that clenching his teeth. And then Potowa explained always being mindful. One needs to endeavor in examining one's own mind stream. One must relinquish and protect oneself from any negative emotions. Ben Quingyo is quite well known from the words of my favorite teacher, the words of my perfect teacher, if you remember the story of Ben Quingyo. He said that from now on, I have nothing to do but wait continuously at the entrance gate to the castle of my mind with the spear-like antidote in hand. When the spear is raised, I am alert. If the spear is lowered, it means that I have become too loose. It means that the mind is constantly guarding, just as a person holding a spear that is guarding the castle. If a person has good practice, then that person knows how to use the antidote at times when it is needed and knows how to relax when there is no negative emotion. And then from Henri Tampa, he said that throughout daily activities, one continuously examines one's being. And as soon as negative emotions arise, since they are vicious to oneself and others, indeed, the negative emotions could harm oneself and others. Therefore, one must avert them directly from with a sudden force. And if you go somewhere else or simply turn your face away, negative emotions may thereby also calm down. What it means is that at times when we are in a neutral state, for example, when you are going somewhere else, or simply turning your face away, or maybe stretching, or maybe walking, at that time you should not stay with your afflictions. You should not let affliction to have any opportunity to sprout. Rather, as a true practitioner, just like the great masters of the past, they all have great antidotes to work with afflictions. Of course, the antidotes refers to the antidotes from Sutrayana methods. For example, in the way of the Bodhisattva, where it talks about one should view afflictions as an enemy. We should eradicate the afflictions. We should then dispel such kind of enemy. But once you reach to a higher state, such as in Vajrayana, then one should look at the true face of aggression. At that moment, when you see the true nature of aggression, then it simultaneously would disappear. This is another method. Of course, different kinds of yanas, different kinds of vehicles have different methods of working with afflictions. As we had studied from Chontumpa yesterday, that if it can be applied to negative emotions or work with the negative emotions, then that is Dharma, otherwise it is not. So the true measurement to see whether you have succeeded on the path of practice is whether your afflictions are decreasing. Otherwise, you are failing on the path if your afflictions has been increasing. So nowadays, I understand that battling with afflictions, sometimes you win, sometimes you fail, just as two children competing with one another. And then from Nyugrumpa, he said, if negative emotions appear, by no means be lazy, but reverse them with an antidote. If you're not able to reverse them, get up and prepare a mandala offering. There are different versions. Some says to practice confession, but over here it says mandala offering. Offer this to the lamas and the idams and supplicates them. As you focus on them, recite wrathful mantras. Why do you need to make those preparations of offering? It is because the reason that you cannot work with affliction is because the lack of merit. That is why you need to make a mandala offering and all kinds of offerings to make it to the lamas and idams and supplicate them. As you focus on them, you should practice the wrathful mantras, the wrathful Pamasambhava, for example. Negative emotions will thereby calm down. Also, practicing mandala offering is really important. Sometimes the reason that you cannot work with negative emotions or cannot receive profound Dharma teachings is because your merit is not sufficient. That is why you need to practice mandala at those points. Another method is to supplicate often. I myself feel that supplicating to Phuntsok Rinpoche is really helpful. Whenever I feel that I have lots of afflictions or have obstacles, then I would chant Phuntsok Rinpoche's supplication for 100 times. Sometimes the afflictions if we were to supplicate diligently, then the afflictions won't harm us, including maybe nightmare, including obstacles, and so on and so forth. If we can supplicate to Pamasambhava or to Phuntsok Rinpoche, then we can work with it. At times of receiving the Holy Dharma, we sometimes could encounter obstacles and afflictions and so on, but those are also signs. Those are also a sign for you to make more supplications. I think I've told you that when I first got ordained, I received a teaching from an old Kempo. He said that if I were to only want to pay attention to work with obstacles, sometimes we would lack in strength. That is when you should supplicate to the three jewels and to the Lama. And I think this is such a great pith instruction. Ever since then, I would supplicate to Pontsuk Rinpoche and to Pamasambhava whenever I feel uncomfortable, whenever I feel not at ease, and whenever I feel there are obstacles and so on. And because of those supplications, I've noticed that obstacles would cease into or disappear into Dhammadhatu, and sometimes it would be transformed into favorable conditions. And that is how we over here in the Dorji Dudu Ling had overcame lots of obstacles. Nowadays, it is difficult to give Dharma teachings for that long time. Year by year, I've persisted in giving Dharma teachings. I had never interrupted the Dharma teachings every year. I started back in 1980-ish. And I had persisted all the way till now. It is not that easy. Well, 3 or 4 years, there are people who would tell me that, oh, I've already been on this position and staffing on this position and work for the Sangha for 3 to 4 years, which sounds pretty long. But I've been teaching for 30 years, and some people have been staffing for over 40 years or even longer, and that is because we supplicated to the three jewels and to the Lama. Otherwise, if we were to simply rely on our own strength in this degenerated age, our strength could be quite weak, just like a lamp that is exposed in ghastly wind. So within this degenerated age, we should supplicate wholeheartedly to Pontsuk Rinpoche. And I genuinely am saying this is because Pontsuk Rinpoche is such a great Bodhisattva that manifested in this world, in this degenerated age, to propagate Dharma, to make Buddhism prosperous again. That is why we need to rely on this dependent arising and rely on our lineage, the power of lineage, to supplicate to Pontsuk Rinpoche, so that maybe temporarily the obstacles and such coarse signs may appear, but in the ultimate way, everything would be transformed into favorable conditions. And then moreover, from Gyaltse Tokme himself, a training in taming the thoughts of the three poisons during post-meditation stage is indispensable until all thoughts and appearances have arisen as Dharmakaya. Hence, remember it when necessary. Do not let confused thoughts run wild. All of you Maniwas, and Maniwa over here refers to this group of people living over there. As well as the first, one must identify negative emotions upon rising, then one must give them up, having developed the strength of antidote, and then at the end one should endeavor so that they do not reappear in the future. He himself practiced in this way as well.
Sonam dui tamche zubanya tomna ni be jana pashe jirga nanji ranong chubai jibum sonen jova jura shang